Thanks very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Awesome. All right. So seeing that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people here now. Hi, Erica. We will start the meeting of the August 7th meeting of the Charter Review Committee. There was some clarification on scheduling because of the 4th of July. We had missed one meeting, so we just moved it to the next week, and then I've been doing every 2 weeks off of that. So I hope that helps clarify our meeting schedule for people. And I am not seeing any attendees, but it looks like many of us are here, so I'll go through a roll call. Bernie?
Present.
Awesome. Myself, I'm here. Meg?
I'm here.
Raphael?
Here.
Andy?
Here.
Erica?
Here.
Marcus?
Here.
Excellent. So we have, it looks like a total of 7 people, which is great. And the only person we're missing is Ken. And it looks like we do now have one attendee. So I'll move us along. Erica and Meg could not get the minutes to me in time, so we will not be able to do minutes tonight, unfortunately. As soon as you guys can get them to me, that's excellent. Public.
Could I ask, do we get them to you or do we just send them to Athena?
You send them directly to Athena, I think, if that's okay with Athena.
Sure.
Okay, great. Yeah. Just let me know so I can make the agenda when you've done it. Any committee announcements, updates before we move on to public comment? Andy?
Who's on minutes tonight? Is it
That
me?
was my question.
Yeah. It was Ken. So that is, Ken's not here. So the next person after Ken is Raphael.
Great. All right. Thanks.
Great. Very, very
Sorry.
positive.
Glad you asked.
It's all
Shouldn't have
good. I'd rather ask now.
Very positive of you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And then public comment, raise your hand on Zoom or press *9 on telephone. If you'd like to make a public comment, I'll allow you to interact with our committee, and you'll get a total of 3 minutes to speak if you'd like. Any hands? Nope, doesn't look like it. Alrighty. All right. So we will now move on pretty quickly into our agenda. I'm just going to read through our agenda, and in case folks want to screen share, I won't screen share our agenda, because the outreach and feedback subcommittee updates, folks might want stuff to screen share. So I'll pass it to you, Erica, and Meg and Raphael, if you have anything to add for the outreach subcommittee update.
Great, thank you. Since this large group last met, the subcommittee for outreach had one opportunity to meet. And what we discussed primarily was a sort of summary of how our 4 listening sessions have gone, both the good and the bad, and what we'd like to do in the sort of in the remaining time that we have to essentially what we discussed was how to broaden participation. And I want to say that people expressed an overall and sincere appreciation for everyone who joined a public listening session and shared their thoughts with us. Appreciation, which I share. And I think we had some interesting discussions throughout. I think we all would have loved to see more people join in the conversation with us. And so some of the things, we did some brainstorming on additional ideas for outreach activities, some of which include, I'll just share briefly, we're having another meeting to kind of drill down further into some of the details, but I'll just share briefly. One of the things that we talked about was doing a more targeted and specific outreach approach to specific groups in the community, specific organized groups, identity groups, affinity groups, the student population, We want to sort of push against some of the challenges that we faced in attendance because of the fact that it was sort of high summer the whole time we were doing our sessions. And so we have specific ideas about that, and we're also open to hear if other members of the committee have ideas to contribute about that. We're compiling a list that Meg started way back, and we're sort of returning to that list of places to reach out to entities and also people who maybe head groups or are kind of leaders in various ways in the community to reach out to. And that's one of the things. So the other thing that we're discussing is the idea of doing a different kind of public forum in which we have a combination of sort of invited members and open attendance. So we have a kind of anchor to the conversation in the form of a sort of a roundtable with open public participation in there. So we'll think carefully about what that what the invited members of that anchored conversation might be, whether it's making sure that we have some representation from within town government or some representation of the business community, the sort of student population, if we can manage it, other sort of anchoring presences in the room to help drive forward the conversation with open participation. It's not a closed conversation, it's just a different format. And so that's another idea that we were discussing. A third idea that we were discussing is the idea of, which came up with Collins as well, and I can't remember if it was in the last discussion that we had with Collins or some previous one, the idea of following up on many of the conversations that we've had around the annotations to the specific articles in the charter by inviting certain members of town government to visit our meeting and to kind of go into greater depth about particular issues. Again, this is an idea in progress. We're open to additional feedback, but the idea would be not necessarily to what was I going to say? Not to reconduct a formal interview in the way that the survey sort of was taking the place of, but to sort of maybe now some of the questions that have been raised in our conversation about specific articles to sort of extend the depth of the response that we might want to elicit. The other thing I want to say as part of the outreach update is that the survey closed, the town official and staff survey closed, but it remains open. Our deadline passed is what I should say. We decided last meeting to leave it open. And so there was a second batch of responses that came in after our last committee meeting, and I've compiled and sent those along to the feedback subcommittee. And Pat from Collins also requested to see that. Those are anonymized results. And I passed those along for a feedback subcommittee to work with. I think that's everything. I'm going to ask Raphael and Megan if I missed anything or if I missed any detail that we want to share at this point. We're still working on our ideas in our calendar. But I'm just looking back through my notes. Anything you guys want to add?
Just, am I muted? No. We had planned this, Erica referred to this, we had planned this fairly ambitious outreach and then had appreciated and accepted the town communications director taking that on. And we're now going to we're still happy to have her do it, but we're going to augment that with our own outreach and target it more.
Yeah, I think reiterating the point in terms of perhaps there's time here to get input from this whole committee about what else, ideas. I think that would be great. The discussion about inviting people to the whole committee, I'm not sure folks got clearly what Erica was sharing. I don't know if we didn't flush that out clearly yet. I think there was some conversation about whether or not the smaller committee does that or the whole committee.
Yeah. Thank you, Raphael. And also there was an important conversation that we had about timing.
Yeah,
And I wanted to just raise that, which is we did discuss that there's an interesting opportunity between the moment of the draft report and the preliminary report. That is sort of like once the initial results of all of our findings so far are compiled in whatever form, once that is available as something to respond to, and then the preliminary report, it's an interesting window of opportunity to do some more targeted and specific outreach efforts once we have a kind of a working document to refer to, like this is an issue, these are some issues that keep coming up, how do you feel, what additional points are we missing? So that was an issue of timing that I thought was interesting and important that came up in our conversation.
Yeah, and I think to sort of have this committee consider, like you have this initial report emerging, that's an opportunity to share what's been found, but also like try to link it to some additional opportunities to get feedback from the community.
I think what we're saying is we want our outreach to be more strategic and focused based on what we're hearing so that we're getting more clarification about what we're hearing from the public.
Andy has his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I think that I mean, in the feedback report, you'll hear that we have quite a bit of input, quite a large number of ideas already, and I was thinking that it's easier in some ways for people to respond to something than to just blue sky it, and so I think that if we come up with a draft, that will be something that people can say, you know, yes or uh-oh or whatever, but I think that they will be able to respond in a way that maybe they might be more interested or more feel like they don't have to know everything about the charter. They can see a document and respond to it. So
Right.
I think that idea of hitting the gap between the initial and the whatever the first and the second report would be very, very promising and probably we'd probably get more interest. The other thing I'm wondering is, are you guys preparing a summary of the ideas from the forums? Because right now we have a list of ideas that have come in on the website and ideas that have come in public comment, and we have the survey data, but there were a number of ideas that came in the forums that, and I know that some of the notes that I've seen had a number of ideas. We just want to make sure we're not missing anything from those.
Yeah, if I could answer. So we've delegated out, we've each collected and are reviewing the notes and want to give them over to your committee in a more or less consistent format. So some notes are more transcript-ish and some are more lists, and just want to hand it over probably by the beginning of next week so that you can have it for your next meeting.
Raphael and then Meg.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, Meg, go ahead.
Meg,
You're
you're
muted.
You're muted.
Erica, I'm wondering, and Andy, if you two should chat about how our committees collaborate. So we're doing outreach and you're doing analysis of what we find out. It might be that you could give us helpful information about doing more strategic outreach.
I'll just add one comment. I'm not completely sure how I feel about the idea of like gathering a group of community leaders and sort of discussing that with them. I think if it's implemented properly with the right people, it could work. But I also think that sort of we don't want to skew the data too much towards a certain perspective. And so it's just worth sort of, I think if it's done well, it could work, but we need to balance that. Raphael?
I think part of like the discussion about community leaders and others was getting the word out to getting the word out. We did this primarily during the summer. We're looking for that window between initial and preliminary report to inform more. So you have stuff that's been gathered. We're looking for that perhaps second phase where we're really targeted. We sort of do more in terms of getting more folks to perhaps like engage with us. So it's like a second push perhaps. So the leader point isn't only about like getting folks to discuss elements of the charter that we target, but it's also, to me, like to get word out, like this work is still ongoing. Share with your
Right.
networks. Let folks know what's going on.
Meg?
And if there were a public session with, say, elected leaders, the larger public would be invited to participate and listen and make comments. This wouldn't favor elected leaders over the public. It would enable some back and forth.
Andy?
Just, I'm remembering during the Charter Commission, we had particular topics where, like the finance section or whatever, where we would be like, let's get the finance committee in here, or, you know, or the,
Right.
you know, representatives of the council and the school committee and the library trustees and the finance committee, something like that, to say, you know, here's what we're thinking. You know, what are we missing? How's this timeline work, etc. So that was really helpful, and it might be, there might be certain sections that we want to bring in people who have expertise and who have wrestled with this to say, here's why you can't do that, or here's why you should, you know. So
Bernie?
Turn my mic
Muted.
on. There we go. Yeah, just to make the obvious point that we're going to be dependent upon elected officials to accept and implement whatever it is we suggest. So including them at some point and getting some feedback from them and getting expertise where it's needed in terms of certain portions of the operation of town government can't hurt. So I would be just, you know, we need to include them, and we need to include them directly.
Meg?
So Bernie, did you just say that they have to accept what we propose?
Well, we're
One of
gonna-
my
we're-
concerns is that they can just ignore what we propose.
Well, you know, we're an advisory board to the council. You know, the council's going to have to take up our report, discuss and debate it, and decide what they want to do with it. So, you know, at some point, it makes sense to talk to councilors. It also makes good sense to talk to the finance director when he lands, to get some idea about the mechanics of putting the budget together and timing it, because that's some things that's one topic that's come up repeatedly. You know, so that's the long and the short of it. Is, you know, you want to build those people in. You also want to talk to other community leaders who are not elected officials, who are influencers, if you will, who can go back to their particular groups and engender some additional interest in this. And I think if we have as Andy suggested, we have a draft document, we get something that people can respond to, then I think we'll have some interesting discussions.
Meg and then Erica? I totally.
Just quickly, is the council obligated to respond to our report? Because one of the things we've heard is that there'll be a committee set up by the council, like the solar bylaw committee, that
They have.
their
I
proposal isn't voted on.
I believe they'll respond, but they don't necessarily have to do anything with it. They could do nothing. They could vote favorably. They could vote unfavorably. They could go through each and every part of it and make recommendations and have a subcommittee. I don't know what they're going to do. I think that really lies in the discretion of the new council. And I mean, to an extent, I don't think it'll look great if they do absolutely nothing, but that is an option. I mean, it is something they might do. We don't know who will be on the council. Erica?
So, I just wanted to say that I don't think there's a real question that we're soliciting the participation of, town officials, town council in some way. Our first reach out to that group has been through the survey. We got a sort of limited response there. I think it's a question of the format of like how we're inviting those folks to participate. Whether it's here in this meeting has a certain meaning, it has a certain context, and it has a certain kind of closed door quality, even though it's a public meeting. There's pros and cons to it. There's also pros and cons to putting town councilors and other town officials or town leaders in whatever way we decide in a room with the general public and kind of trying to have a conversation about the things that continually emerge in these response mechanisms. There's recurring themes, and again, in that window between when we've had data collected and before we kind of move on to the next phase of a report, there's another format to consider, like I said earlier, which is have a combination of the two. There's not necessarily a need to keep them completely separate. We could have a kind of mixed audience, mixed respondent sort of forum if we think that through. I don't think they need to be exclusive to each other.
I have a comment myself. Raphael, go ahead first.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the building into the process piece. I think, as Erica just pointed out, like town councilors had an opportunity to weigh in via surveys. I think offering them or affording them another opportunity or other opportunities to share in different ways is important. Particularly if it follows, like, what have we discovered thus far? Like the learning more from council and various stakeholders in this town, I think is crucial.
Yep.
Yeah, I just have my own comment. I'd like to move us along to the feedback subcommittee update when we get a chance. But I think, in my mind, I think it would be an excellent idea to invite our new finance director, Sean, who's coming back. That was a really great idea, Bernie. And I think that in terms of inviting town councilors, I can see why we might want to have a specific listening session with all of the council or have a joint meeting with the entire council. I worry about inviting specific councilors because I feel like then we just get people who are interested or who feel they have a stake in the process, or folks who have a certain sort of political leaning. I think that it's most important that if we do work with the council, we invite everyone. And I also think that like councilors had one chance to weigh in already, which is through the survey that we sent all of them. And I believe only one person actually filled it out on the council. I was really impressed. We got more responses from staff, I think, than we did.
I believe we had 4 councilors.
Current?
It's a couple former.
Okay, current, I only counted 1, but I'll double check on that. Andy?
Yeah, I agree that we should invite the entire council. And I guess maybe I'm reiterating an idea that Bernie said, but if this is going to the council and they have asked us to do the work, and they will then be the recipients who will decide which parts of it they want to go with. I think it's good for us to keep them in the loop and give them an update as we're going along, so they can give us a sense of, now we're aware of this, and now we can be anticipating it coming in. So I think it might lead to more to them approaching it in a way that would be more informed than if we just deliver the report at the end.
Excellent. Let me take my hand down. Other comments? Bernie, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Some of the stuff that we've seen, some of the notions, some of the ideas, really don't have to go in the charter, and maybe wouldn't be appropriate to go in the charter. But the council has its own set of rules that it adopted, and those rules can be modified. And that's another reason to talk to the councilors, because it may be a very simple thing for them to modify their rules and make things a little more workable. So we need to keep that in mind as well. That's something that we'll puzzle over when we, the feedback committee gets going more.
Great. I see 2 current counselors and 2 former counselors, so I was incorrect. It looks like there's 4 in total, 2 current, 2 former. Other questions, comments?
Can you
Meg?
can you tell us who they are?
I do not know. Erica did not send
Oh.
me that information.
In the sending out this information, the responses to the survey, I anonymized them so that their roles are identified in the
Okay.
spreadsheet. And I can send you more information, Meg.
That's
but
okay. No, that's okay.
They're anonymous
Yeah,
for
good. That's
all
actually
future purposes.
good.
The
Thank you.
only question I had is I don't want us to double count, because I know we had 1 former counselor and 1 current counselor who it appears filled out the form, and then also sent us additional separate feedback. So I just don't want us to accidentally sort of count those as 2 responses, if you will. Andy?
Yeah, I don't think we're approaching this as a quantitative exercise. We are looking at, if we hear something a few times, we know if it's framed differently. We're keeping every single response, but we wouldn't double count. We wouldn't say, oh, this is more important because they submitted it twice. I looked at that too, and the one of the submissions, or several of the submissions, were pretty much had been submitted before, maybe twice.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Feedback subcommittee update, passing it right back to Andy.
We have taken all of the, as I mentioned, we've taken all the feedback that's come in on the input form. We've taken went through all of the meetings to collect whatever people had said in public comment. And we also had 1 or 2 people who had emailed the committee. So I know we got an email recently that had 4 documents in it, so that's in as well. So we're keeping an overall spreadsheet, which I can just share just so you can see and get a sense of it. So this is the overall spreadsheet, and you'll see it has names in it and dates. So the question of whether we want to keep names of counselors, we may want to discuss that at some point. But this is where word for word everything that's been suggested is collected. So that
Amazing.
is sort of the raw data, I guess. And we're going to create another tab for the survey information, because there are different categories of questions in that. So that'll be a separate tab. But we haven't gotten that put in yet. But there's a fair amount of information that's come in. It includes the indie, column that was signed by multiple people. It includes, if people submitted things that had 20 bullets, the 20 bullets are in there. Here's the public comment. And then there's some general comments that really didn't suggest charter changes, but they are captured. They're grouped at the bottom just so we can sort the ones that had suggestions. And so that is that document. And then let me stop sharing. Then we've taken that and created a document that is organized by article, and it attempts to organize the ideas that have come in, putting the sort of easiest ones first, and then the more complicated, the ones that take a heavier lift, such as sending it to the state legislature or whatever, or a new charter commission, sort of in that order. But you'll see that there was a suggestion for a preamble, so that comes first. Then Article 1, there's revisit a definition of a public forum. That's fairly concrete. Down to return to the town meeting form of government, or alternatively adopt a council mayor form of government. That's much more of a existential question. So the legislative branch has been quite a bit of input. There's numerous, there's the lame duck period. There's numerous suggestions around term limits for councilors or for the leadership. There's a number of suggestions about public comment, about councilor meetings with constituents, about assignments of councilors to committees, training of committee chairs. And I'm not laughing at the idea. I'm just, the extent of the ideas is quite broad. All the way to increase the number of councilors or decrease the number of councilors. Executive branch, not quite as much as the legislative, but it probably is second in terms of number of suggestions. Town manager evaluations, checks and balances. Who employs the council clerk? Processes for appointments, who appoints what, elected mayor instead of town manager. Other elected offices, the 8-week lame duck period shows up both in the Article 2 and Article 4. Terms suggested for various committees. Housing authority, whether it should be should continue to be partially elected or appointed. Lengthen and stagger terms for elected offices. Article 5, we've got clarify what a new appropriation is, to more transparency, concerns about lack of collaboration, who should be on the finance committee, whether residents should have votes. Standing building committee to handle construction of all town buildings. Up to limits on property taxes. Article 6, only 2 suggestions so far. Article 7, elections, recall provision, ranked choice voting, how open seats are filled, lengthening and staggering terms. Article 8, there's quite a bit in Article 8, as we've heard in the forums. Maintaining hybrid and virtual meetings, make public who's in meetings, and better website, better interface, person or persons specifically appointed for better interface between town government and citizens of the town. I believe we have something on that in the charter, but maybe there are ways to improve it. Allowing electronic signatures, increasing the signature requirement, reducing the signature requirement, increase the time allowed for signature collection, decrease the time allowed for signature collection, certification of signatures, delete exceptions to the voter veto, marketing to get more people involved, simultaneous translation of all official meetings, develop digital platform, general outreach for protocol for public input. Article 9, consider whether the council actually needs to adopt a master plan. Other reasons for removal from office other than attendance or felony conviction. Require a charter review every 5 years. Article 10 is basically saying recommit to implement the 5 programs that were listed in Article 10 previously, including ranked choice voting, participatory budgeting, Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator, allowing non-citizens to vote, and lowering the voting age for town elections. And then some other ideas that were more general that didn't fit any of the articles as far as we could tell, or at this point. So that is sort of, there's duplications in here, and I think, and there's clusters of things. And so Ken is working now to add some subheaders that will make it easier to know what the big ideas are that are in there. And at some point, I think we're going to want to create a shorthand version that says, here's the issue. Do we think it's in or do we think it's out? Do we want to discuss it as a full team or not? And so our hope is to create, to pull in the input from the survey and from the forums, and then to create that list like the one that's here, and then boil it down to an issue-based one that we can then use in probably a fairly long meeting where we go through and say, is it in, is it out? Should we discuss this further, and then take it from there? So however the committee wants to use that, but that's our goal.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had one very quick question, which is, and it's totally fine if not, has the input from elected officials and town staff gone into that document yet or not?
Not yet.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, we did this in time for our meeting that was on Tuesday, and I think we got the survey on Monday, and we also want to get the notes from the forum. So, but all that will go into it, and as soon as we're meeting again next Thursday, since the full committee is not meeting then. So, or that's our hope, is to meet next Thursday and take it the next step. So we'll take whatever we've got and try to cram it in there before the next Thursday and have something for you next meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. Erica.
Thanks. Thanks for the work, Andy, and the whole group. It's great to see that the compilations start happening for real. And I had a question about two quick things. Does the current list format reflect like a kind of assessment of like frequency, sort of like how often things are showing up in the various forms of input? Because it's a massive list, and it's really interesting, and it's also interesting to consider how many times each one of those things is showing up in various ways in different forms of comment. And my other question, and then I'll just stop, is I remember that Ken had shared an example of a spreadsheet from another town that had a really interesting sort of like a method for citation, or kind of pointing at this is the kind of comment that we got and this is where it came from. That either it came from written comments, or it came from a public forum, or it came from a town official answering a survey. And those, I thought it was a really interesting approach, and I don't know if that was still in consideration.
As far as frequency, you'll see a bunch around public comment and a bunch around term limits and a bunch around those are the two that I'm thinking off the top of my head, but also in the public, public, the sort of Article 8 section. If they were at all different, they were listed separately. But like we said, we have some counselors or former counselors who would put things in 2 or 3 times, and we didn't put those in 2 or 3 times. Again, what we're trying to do is get a sense of the universe of ideas that are coming in, and we're not, because 5 people said it or 1 person said it, that's still, either way, it's a fairly minuscule number compared to the population of the town. So I think it's up to us to say, if only 1 person said something, but it's a good idea, we should consider it. So we will have the frequency will be in the Excel spreadsheet, because all of the comments will be there. But I think when we're getting to the point of trying to decide, how to sort through the ideas, it's more like, these are all the categories of ideas that were brought up, and now what do we want to do with them? So I think that's our sense. It's really not, it's not, the data that we have is not a representative sample of the town. It's just who happened to show up, and 5 people send in comments from wherever, and so we have 5 of them saying it instead of 1, but it's not necessarily different in terms of, that doesn't mean that it's 5 times as popular amongst the townspeople. And as far as where the ideas came from, that will be in the Excel spreadsheet, the raw data spreadsheet, because it indicates who gave the input, if it's came through the web, or whether it was from a forum, or whether it was from a survey. But as far as I guess we could trace it back, but the list are by article. We haven't talked about trying to maintain where it came from in those. It's more like we're casting a wide net, we're getting all the ideas, and then it's up to us to use our judgment to decide what goes forward. But we can certainly trace it back if people think that's that will help us.
I was just going to add one thing, which is, I think it would be awesome, and obviously I don't direct the committee, but I think it would be great if this list could be synthesized into something that could be put on sort of a bulletin board or a 1-pager type thing. And like, we hold listening sessions, maybe at the block party this fall. We put up, like, we have dots where people can put like green dot, yellow dot, red dot, 2 ideas, and sort of get an idea of what people think of this just passing out on the street. I mean, we could put something on the bulletin board at town hall where people can put dots on it. We can have it at the block party, have it at other local events. And I think, like, obviously we're not going to be getting everyone in town's opinion, but get more of a representative sample on these ideas, or at least a sample that's sort of randomized.
Yeah, I think our hope is to make this usable and understandable, usable for us and understandable for the public, to see the kinds of ideas that have come in, and then we can use that in forums going forward, or we can use it in our own deliberations. Hopefully by the time the block party comes, we may have boiled down to a set of ideas that we want to put forward, or that we don't want to cancel out yet, at least. And so then maybe we can get feedback in a number of ways at that point.
Excellent. Raphael?
Does the committee feel like they want to take on, like, quantifying, like, engagement with, like, number of feedback forms submitted? Is that something you all have been thinking about, worthwhile, or no?
I think as part of a final report, that would make sense to say, we received X number of submissions through the web.
Yeah.
We found opinion pieces that, we included, and we summarized the forums, and we had received X number of responses from the survey. Yeah, I think we could do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would be worthwhile too. And then your point about is it in or out? I think the committee should really think about like what that process will be at some point. How we'll
Yeah.
go about doing that.
Right.
Thanks. Great work.
Alrighty, thank you. Other comments, questions on this? No. Okay. I was just gonna give a quick open meeting law reminder. I shouldn't have to say this, but just be careful of what emails get sent. It's fine that we have like the whole committee on an email chain, but even if you're gonna miss a meeting or can't be at a meeting, sending all of your ideas via email to the whole committee is still considered deliberation. So the best thing to do is email Athena and say, here are my ideas, I have them written up, can we get them posted in the packet? Or email me and say, hi, here's a submission for the packet of my thoughts. Emailing the entire committee with your ideas, even if you can't be there or whatever, is still deliberating, if you will. So just sort of a reminder of the right way to go about that. Any questions? No? Okay. And then the next thing I have is the reporting process, and how we want to structure our report, and sort of a first discussion of what we want that to look like. I know we've discussed a little, which this conversation can sort of morph into a retreat, or morph into an idea for a retreat that I was hoping we would sort of discuss and maybe plan a retreat of the committee and what we wanted to do there. So I'll open it up to folks' ideas. I would love it if we can sort of emerge from the conversation with an idea of when we want to have a retreat and what we want to do there and how that will work towards our final report. Bernie?
Having a retreat, a public body having a retreat is not a new concept. And it's happened with bodies here in town. So one of the things I'd like to do is get KP Law to send us their outline of how you hold a retreat and not violate the open meeting law. And once we have that, and I'm sure that that's, it's a common topic, and KP Law has a process of doing these general reminders for all of their clients. So it's not like we're incurring a cost to have them send us something pull something from the files and send to us.
Right.
So once we have that in hand, then I think we can plan around doing a retreat.
Great. Raphael?
Julian, are you proposing a retreat for which report?
For us to draft our first report.
The preliminary?
Yes.
Or
Preliminary.
Okay. And great idea. What about the timeline? When is that on the table to discuss? Like our time? Just something to think about at some point for us to
Yeah.
have.
I was hoping we could do it as soon as is feasible, but it really is a matter of everyone's schedules and where the committee's at. Andy?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to call it a retreat. It might just be a long meeting. It's gonna, a long public meeting, and if people want to show up, fine, and watch us work, that's great. But we did a Saturday meeting, probably a couple times on the Charter Commission, and we were there with a lunch break, and then convened again in the afternoon. So it was either Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember which. And I don't know that we need to call it a retreat. I think we could just say we're going to have a meeting and it's going to be up for us to deliberate.
Yeah.
And the people are welcome to come if they want, but they might get tired. And then as far as the format, I thought that the format that Ken showed us from Framingham, it was basically a table that showed, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, and it had, what the change was and why, or something like that. And that to me is something that would be very useful for the council and also for the public to be able to grok fairly easily. And so that, and maybe then a short summary of the process that we had. So, how we went about collecting information, how we went about deciding, and but the meat of it would be a chart. And I think our report can be anything we want it to be, and I think that would probably be more useful than a bunch of paragraphs of language that we have to create and that they have to read. So
other thoughts? I was thinking we might want to do this in person. I think it's worthwhile to really get together and maybe have documents we can scour over together and ideas and whatnot. An 8-hour Saturday or Sunday type thing makes a lot of sense to me. Marcus?
Can we do this offsite?
What is that?
I was just thinking, no, I'm just being facetious. I was thinking mainly a brewery nearby might be good.
I'm not 21 yet, although in the urge.
Oh, there's places with seltzer, so.
Well, that might facilitate discussion, but the quality of the discussion.
Higher quantity discussion, lower quality discussion.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. Yeah.
we did get a room in the Bank Center for our Saturday session for the Charter Commission. That was conducive to us working.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a nice.
It's a great idea. Erica?
Yeah, in terms of nailing down the shape and the timing of a retreat or a working session or whatever we're calling it, I think it'd be good to have a sense of the calendar and maybe working backwards for like when are we aiming for the final, even if it's a rough, cloudy date right now, but like working backwards from there, like how much time do you think we'll need to get from the intermediate to the final, and then like I think figuring out roughly where we are in the calendar is important to place this session.
Okay.
What is our target for the final?
Yeah,
Is it October 31st? Is that what we're saying?
That's
I
what
can't
we were
remember.
saying.
What?
That's what we were saying, yes.
Okay, so October 31st is the final. And what is the second one is what? Preliminary?
Preliminary, yeah.
So preliminary, and then the one before that is initial?
Correct. And included in that is we need to hold a public forum on the preliminary report.
On the preliminary?
Yes.
Okay. So we want to have the initial and we want to get some feedback on that. And then we want to have the preliminary and have a forum on that. But do we think which will change the most? Will it change the most from the initial to the preliminary or from the preliminary to the final?
Erica?
Yeah, it's my belief, but that it'll change more from the initial to the preliminary, but I'm not sure. And I think that's the bigger window of opportunity for additional means of feedback. As we were talking about earlier, both subcommittees have a kind of interest in putting out something and having a window of opportunity to use that as a tool to solicit more input and work that into the preliminary.
Excellent. Other thoughts? How do folks? Andy, go ahead.
So it's August 7th. And we still have a fair amount, we still have to have this big meeting, and we still have to get the information crunched up so that we can have the big meeting. And then, I mean, I was thinking like the initial would be like mid-September, and the preliminary might be mid-October, and then the final at the end of October. I don't know.
I think if we had a meeting, like a long meeting, retreat, whatever you want to call it, at the beginning of September, that might be appropriate.
And then we have to create hopefully we come out of enough that enough so that we would have that, and we can create that initial chart.
Raphael?
Yeah, I think something to consider is, when do we want to plan that retreat? Are we looking to do that for the initial report? Will we convene again for the final? What are folks' thoughts? Because
I think we would have read.
You go ahead, Andy.
I think we would need to have that big meeting to boil down what we're going to send out to the public in the initial.
The initial for the initial.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Agree. Bernie, then Marcus, then Erica.
Yeah, at some point, we're gonna have to include, I think, I would like to include, having the Collins Center review our work.
Mhm.
And I would think it would be necessary for the town attorney to review our work.
Mhm.
So at some point, whether it's between the interim and the preliminary and the final, we need to make room for that, because I think those are necessary steps. And we'll have to make some adjustment after we get comments back from those parties as well as from the public.
Marcus?
I was just saying, I think actually we probably are going to end up with 3 retreats, or 3 extended meetings, whatever you want to call them, 1 for each at least. You know, I think for certain the initial, but I would think that a long time will be required.
Great. Erica, I was thinking maybe the weekend of the 6th.
I just wanted to make a comment, sort of like Marcus's, that I think we need to allow for the possibility that we'll need more than one sort of working session, sort of before and after the initial, for sure. Like, and to Andy's point, we're going to need to have a big meeting to do the work to compile. I mean, the subcommittee is compiling, but just to translate that into a report that we all are signing off on. And then a sort of a meeting to work through whatever remaining feedback or forums or input comes in between initial and preliminary, and how we want to incorporate that. And that might be an interesting opportunity for the legal input that Bernie was talking about, and then maybe for Collins as well in between those two. And I would think that I would hope that maybe there's a way that between preliminary and final, that's when we have the public forum. That is much less of a lift for this group, that we incorporate everything we're hearing as a response to the preliminary, but that we're not hopefully not doing the legal consulting or the Collins consulting at the sort of very tail end. Hopefully we can have that a little bit earlier in the process, is my thought right now.
I can understand doing the Collins consulting at the sort of in the middle, like at different points. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the legal consulting, it sort of depends on what perspective the attorneys are willing to take. If they're saying, here's an alternative way to do this, or if they're saying, you cannot do this. I feel like that means two different things for our committee, and we should get an answer to which type of service they're providing first. Andy?
I was actually thinking that we would get public feedback after the initial. That if we get a good enough list at the initial, then we can get public feedback. We can then fine tune for the preliminary, and then we can send that. I mean, we could send both of them to the Collins, but we could send that for legal after the preliminary. And hopefully, like we use the initial to get a decent jump on it, and then the preliminary is pretty much finalizing it. So we would want to get input before the preliminary, and then we check the legality. I don't know. I mean, it would be great not to have to do an overhaul twice.
Erica?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying, Andy, except for I thought I was under the impression that we had to have a public forum between the last two. But maybe I was reading that wrong. The idea of a public forum after there's a preliminary report. But the active work of collecting feedback that we were talking about earlier in today's meeting about outreach, I'm thinking that's happening between initial and preliminary.
Yeah, I agree.
Bernie, sorry I missed you. Your hand blends into the background.
Yeah, I know, I've got to change the tone of that. Yeah, whether we need to do another public hearing or public meeting or not, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to have another public presentation, if you will, if not a formal kind of hearing on the final product before it goes to council. The other thing about the purpose behind having the town attorney review this is not simply, can we do it or not? It's what's required. Because some changes may be a simple vote, some changes, as I suggested earlier, might just be a revision to the council's own rules. There may be a simple way to amend the charter, or it might require a more complex amendment process. And I think if we're going to go to the council with a series of recommendations, we should be prepared at that point to say, here's how you do this. And we need council we need the town attorney that to help us decide that. And also to keep in mind that KP Law has written scores and scores of legislation. So if we need to have something written so that it will be acceptable to the Commonwealth, they're a group to do it.
Okay, thank you. Raphael?
Yeah, it's also important to think about the outreach committee report earlier in terms of how much time do we want to utilize to do that push that we talked about in sharing the initial report and drawing in other stakeholders. Like carving out a chunk of time for that will be important. So in essence, what are we looking at for that work? 4 weeks? Less? So considering that now is important.
Great. I agree. I think we should maybe set a date or a goal for our first retreat / work session for September 6th. How does that work for folks? We can get back to me over email, etc. That's fine too if that doesn't work.
And I heard you say 8 hours. 8 hours.
8 hours. 8 hours.
I don't know. I don't know. Retreats are a part of, but that's a long retreat. All good though. 8 hours a lot.
Well, so if it's on the weekend, we can claim it's time and a half and we won't have to pay taxes.
Problem solved. Work that overtime, guys.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, could we do the 7th?
Sure, that works
That's a
fine.
Sunday.
That is a
Sunday?
Sunday, yes, that is a Sunday.
Can we
So-
get the Bang Center on Sunday?
Oh, can you?
Probably, but
Is the 6th impossible, Marcus?
I mean, I can make it. I'm meant to be umpiring at Franklin Pierce University on Sunday, but I can change that if you guys want to.
Well, that's cool. Baseball,
No, field hockey.
cool.
I-
Girls,
Yes.
I have to be the nerd here.
you go to church.
I don't know if it's still possible to hold a public meeting on the common day of rest.
Oh shit.
Huh? Really?
Right,
That's
I mean,
Hmm.
one of the problems of being old. And then-
Yeah, I mean,
I like
puritanical.
rest. I like
Remember,
resting
you
on
remember
Saturday.
stuff like this, and I don't know if I'm certainly not current, if you can hold a public meeting on the common day of rest.
Well,
So
I
I think you can if it's an emergency,
I
but
like resting on Saturday.
Uh,
I would rather not.
we'll check that.
Raphael, you said you'd rather not.
Not do something.
that's fine. Yeah, I can make a change. That's fine.
It's cool that you umpire field hockey games, though.
Yeah. You might actually be helping me out. So.
Oh, okay. So the 6th, are we doing the 6th or
Yeah, that sounds good.
are we wavering? Are we?
The 6th is fine with me.
So it's
I
all
did-
day, kind of?
Yes, I did ask ChatGPT. It says that you can meet on a Sunday in Massachusetts, but it is not a lawyer. So
It also.
So which are we pick? Which is it?
Well, it refers to the open meeting law as being silent. So the 6th, we're safe. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd say
That
we
sounds good.
just do the 6th. That's fine with me.
But what
We
time is
say
it looking at? Or are we,
9
are the
9 a.m.
advisors here? Okay.
6
9
a.m. 6 a.m. Raphael, if you want it,
Oh,
it's 6
oh
a.m.
my God,
Want to work 6 to 2?
you're kidding.
And we at least have the evening off.
6 a.m. Okay.
How about
That'll be
9?
cool.
9's good. 10. something.
9 is fine
10
with me. 9
10 would be great.
10?
10 sounds
10?
good. It's a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
But
10
what
to
do I do?
6.
What do I
Okay.
do with my video?
So maybe we do 10 to 4 or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do like 10 to 4 or 10 to 5. I feel like 10 to 6.
10 to 4 sounds good, Andy.
Julian,
Andy got
10
in
to-
there quick.
We're gonna have to
Julian,
get
10
more
to 6
efficient.
is 10 to 6, Julian, is like too much.
Yeah.
10 to 4, excellent.
10 to 4 is great. I agree.
I'll bring cookies.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
That's good.
We'll need to check with the Bang Center to make sure that works.
But what about lunch? Are we gonna all bring our lunch?
Lunch? I would say.
Because let me say, we have no budget.
Folks
I
can
have a
bring
personal
pack-
budget for
You can always run out
Antonio
to people.
Santa, yeah.
Yeah, folks can bring a packed lunch or run to the like 10 different great restaurants that are right
Yeah.
by there.
Yeah, we'll have to take a lunch break. So
There is a farmer's market.
Yeah, that's true
That's
too.
good, yeah. They have good blueberry pie, apparently.
oh,
They
Yeah.
have
last
creme
week.
brulee, which is sort of interesting for a farmer's market, but it's good. I've tried it.
Uh,
okay, so that's good.
Well, what if-
Awesome.
So then
So
how
who's-
long do you think it'll take us to get something that will be an initial report after that? Are we gonna do it may be that we have that meeting and then we have to say, oh, we need another meeting like this,
Mm.
Damn,
next weekend.
Andy,
God.
Hopefully we have a strong- in
It's
terms of
expensive
the
to be
work that
efficient,
has
but I mean, I'm just saying.
Andy,
I hope we have a strong draft by the end of that meeting, just in terms of the work to follow. I think it would be helpful. You referenced the report that Ken talked about, perhaps sharing that with the whole committee. I don't know where it is, if it's out there. And then we'll have, I think it's good to prepare with whatever you all's committee has worked on, and just come to the table ready to consider how you weave that into what's been recommended here. That document that Ken talked about, and then the change and why questions are things that people should be thinking about, I think.
Excellent.
Well, maybe for our next meeting of this group, hopefully the feedback subcommittee will have the full list.
Yeah.
And we can propose something that can be a decision-making document that we could sort of say, here's the list of things, and we could talk a little bit about, do we want to go through and say, yes, this is charter related, or no, this is not charter related, or, anyway, we can give something to a document that hopefully can start then the full committee can say, is this something we want to talk about in the full meeting, or do we want to create something else?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Erica?
Additionally, I think it would be good to give some thought to what is what's the best outcome of that day-long session? Like, what do we want to produce at the end of that? And what do we want to come away with to facilitate the next pieces of work for both the outreach work that we're hoping to do in the remaining weeks of September, and also the work that the feedback committee will need to do to take next steps. Like, if we're coming in with a pile of data that the feedback committee has organized for us to use in discussion, what's the end result? How will we know when we're done?
One of my goals, at least, is to sort of narrow down the breadth of ideas, if you will, and say, hey, here's stuff we'd like to work on, here's stuff we wouldn't like to work on. A lot of that we could probably do by consensus. Some of it we may need to take votes on. I think that once we narrow that down, we can sort of start drafting that initial report saying, here's the things we're considering. Here's what's important to us that the committee will be working on, and what ideas we have around those topics or issues. Are there questions, comments on this before I move us along?
No.
No? Okay, great. So, the next two things are reviewing the elected official responses and staff responses, and the transition provision. I know not everyone has gotten a chance to see the responses by town councilors, town staff, school committee, library trustees. I was wondering if we want to pull it up as a group and sort of analyze it, or if we want the feedback subcommittee to sort of look it over and send a synthesized version to the committees, to the full committee. I think that it's something that all the members should definitely see if you get a chance to take a look. There's a lot of excellent feedback in there. We have lots of responses from school committee, library trustees. I was also really impressed to see the depth of some of the responses from town staff were really excellent. So I think that is worth our time. Do folks want you to screen share, or Erica?
I would motion that we bring that to the next meeting, which right now would be the 21st, right? So that if we want to make that an agenda item to take time and look through that specifically as a sort of subset of the larger feedback, that we move that to another meeting, since we've got several several other agenda items that really require attention now. That's just my feeling.
I'm open to that idea. Raphael?
I was going to share, even if hopefully we get to see that data at some point,
I agree.
even if we do it,
Yes.
the whole committee.
I agree.
Yes.
I think it's important for everyone to see. Marcus?
No, I was just gonna second Erica's point. I think, let's talk about it, but at the next meeting, put it on the agenda specifically, and then we can kind of go to town on it. So, yeah.
Sure. That's fine with me. Show of thumbs, I guess we could say. I'm okay with moving it to the next agenda.
Sure.
I think it's important we discuss it. Great. Okay, so moving us right along, I will start screen sharing for the transition provision, which is the last article in the charter for us to officially review. I know, Meg, this has the participatory budgeting in it somewhere. And we're welcome to discuss that as well. Anything Collins
At the very end.
is in red. All right. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. I'll scroll. I'll stop at the end of each section. Ask if there's questions, comments, maybe add something myself, and let me know if I'm going too slow or fast.
Actually, could you just go back for a second there? Sorry. So it's basically saying, let's hold off on this until after we figure out if or any changes will be there. Because I've always been weird about this, maintaining this. I know there was a lot of talk early on about, well, it's kind of a bit of history and all this sort of stuff, but I kind of see this as a living document and it needs to kind of keep up with reality. So I kind of like the idea about waiting on this to see what happens once we've gone through all the ideas and seen what's going on.
Great. Any questions about 10.1? No. 10.2? No.
Marcus, was your comment about one subsection of this article or the
No,
whole?
just the whole thing, right? I mean, it's a transition section, but what are we going to transition to, right? When this goes through, we're not getting ready to implement a new charter. It's a revision of the charter that has existed. So I kind of like the idea of this. What this says is, depending on what we say needs to get changed, we can revisit this after we get a good handle on that. So it's kind of, I guess punting it till the end. I would hope we kind of consider removing some of the things that were specific to when we move from a town meeting to this way of doing business, so that we can keep up with the times.
Andy?
Andy, you're muted.
A lot of this article is just talking about stuff that's already been done. It's how are we going to change to this new form of government? So we've done that. So what's the point of keeping it other than,
Right.
It's a historic document. So I think we could just say, town council, consider whether you want to keep this section or not.
I can see striking many things in here, like
Yeah,
0.3.
I'd agree.
Well, there's a couple of actions that I think need to be revisited. Ranked choice voting, there was a report submitted there was a commission on ranked choice voting, there was a report submitted, and to my knowledge, it's gone nowhere because
Right.
statutes don't allow for ranked choice voting. Do we want to remind the commission that
council.
should that change, they need to take this back up?
Right.
I'm not sure what happened. Meg, you were present, so you can speak to what happened with the participatory budgeting? Because I wasn't able to find a final report from that.
Well, so
Oh,
one of the few things that I contributed to the charter, Andy and I were both on the charter, was the section on participatory budgeting.
let's just
And
for the
I-
sake of
And the,
process go section by section,
okay,
just so that we sort of aren't scattering our thoughts all over with this, and can have a discussion on what's in front of us. So any comments, questions about 10.3 or 10.4? No? 10.5. No? 10.6, any questions on that? No?
I mean,
Questions on
10.7 gets to what we were talking about. It's out of date, but
Yeah, this is all history.
all historical? If you want me to slow down for anything, let me know.
let's just keep going. Pretty soon we'll get to,
Yep. Special act regarding initial election. Any comments on this? This is also history.
How we did it, yeah.
done, check.
Here we go.
10.9. That also looks like history. Questions on that? Okay, now here we go. Great. This is pending. For 10.10. I personally feel like an appropriate action of the committee would be to basically say, we support this. It's still pending. The legislature hasn't prioritized it. Meg, here's 10.11. Do you want to discuss this?
Yeah,
I have a
So-
question.
there were 9 of us on the charter commission. Andy was the chair. And one of the few things that I was a strong advocate for was participatory budgeting. And I did quite a lot of research. I spent a day in Cambridge, built a relationship with the director of their participatory budgeting project. And the charter proposes having a commission or to make a proposal to the council, which we did. And I happened to be the chair of that committee. And as far as I can tell, we made a report. There was no action taken. And there were lots of ways this could, people are very skittish about spending money on something that has to, so should I explain what participatory budgeting is?
yes, please.
Okay, so participatory budgeting is a process that exists in a lot of places. In New Jersey, there's a foundation, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, that funds all participatory budgeting projects in the state. And we could look at private funding for this ourselves. There's a set of categories. So it could be environment, youth interests, safety, whatever. And the people propose projects, the public proposes projects, and they're vetted by the town to make sure they're viable and they're realistic. So for example, in Cambridge, students wanted to give, enable the cafeteria to announce ahead of time what the lunches were, so that students could on the apps choose the lunch that they wanted. So it would be waiting for them. And that was something that was determined to be unviable, and that was eliminated because it wasn't possible to do. But some of the things they funded are solar panels in certain places and bike racks in certain places. The idea is that people propose these projects within a budget, they're vetted, and then the public votes on what they would like funded. And this is a way of giving people, especially young people, a chance to start learning about how the town works, how budgets work, and so on. And there's a whole lot I could share. And if that works for people, I could send you some information about it, like links of how it works in other places. The people in Cambridge said that they would offer to provide technical support for us if we choose to go this way. But the council, as far as I can tell, never voted on our recommendations. There was a committee that was formed that I chaired, and we made a proposal to the council and we gave a verbal report, and I don't think they ever voted on it. And when I've spoken with council members and said, you know, this could be funded separately, even $100,000 for 10 projects at $10,000, you know, approximately, that would give people a chance to participate, engage in something that they initiated and think should happen. And I'm very frustrated. Oh, I'm not going to go on and on about this. Well, I sort of am already, but it's a way of, one of the challenges of this new charter is giving people a way to participate that's meaningful, not just 3 minutes at a beginning of a meeting and not having their questions answered, but to actually make something happen that they would like and that they think would improve the town, whether it's a project at the high school or a safety project, an environmental project, and to see things happening because they had agency. In Cambridge, people vote as young as 12-year-olds, and you vote. I can tell you a lot more about it because, as I said, I spent quite a bit of time down there. Anybody, you register, never mind how you vote, but there's a way of voting that's not at all related to political voting. And people campaign, kids campaign. In Cambridge, they have a big fair where people can come and hear about the different projects and decide what they want to vote on. But I was very discouraged that I don't think the council ever voted on it. So I'm not going to necessarily be a zealot about this, but I'm frustrated that our new government doesn't have enough ways for people to participate where they make a difference, cause something to happen. So, but you know, I get it that people think we don't have any money. We can't afford to do this, but there are other places that find a way.
Thank you.
$100,000 in Amherst is a pittance. $100,000 would be meaningful. Anyway, enough for me on this.
Well, thank you so much, Meg. I'm just gonna make one comment because I can't put my hand up when I'm screen sharing, but I would just say that I completely agree with you. And I think that this is an excellent idea for our community to consider. And I did speak with Andy and Patricia from the Collins Center, Pat, about participatory budgeting, and I did some research on where it sort of went. So basically, they had a committee established, and the committee was established during COVID and recommended that for the time being, nothing be done. And then nothing was sort of done since then or after that. And I personally, I encourage you to be a zealot about it. I hope that you continue to champion this issue because I think it's really important. And, you know, $100,000, $500,000, the reality is the town has that type of money. We just don't prioritize it. And if this charter can sort of force the issue or identify a source of funding for it, I think that would be really excellent. And I hope that we as a committee work on identifying a source where the money could come from and recommending that as one of our changes, because this is an excellent idea. It's great for young people, and it's great to make people feel like they're having an impact, which is something that that we've heard again and again, that folks don't feel like there's adequate public participation or that they can't really have an impact when they volunteer. And I think this is a great place where they could see that, even if it's as much as the little flashing yellow lights that go up at crosswalks. Those sort of things, folks, gives people a way to engage with town government, especially young people. I don't think school lunch idea would work in Amherst because, as far as I last knew, they only served one thing a day for school lunch. There wasn't other options, but I think there's many ways that we could get this involved in the hands of young people. I'm thinking of the solar project over the high school, something I advocated for a long time, that might be able to be partially funded in this way. Bernie and then Andy.
I'd just like to point out that for quite some time, citizens have been invited to propose programs to the Joint Capital Planning Committee. And they have. I haven't been part of the JCPC for quite a while, so I'm not sure what's been approved and what's not, but there is a mechanism for citizens who want to see some kind of capital expenditure happen. And this is the citizens' input was everywhere from, can you paint a crosswalk to much more grander things. And those little yellow flashing lights across the road are more than a pittance. The other thing we need to keep in mind, because we keep forgetting about this, is that the middle and high school are a regional school. They're run by regional government. They aren't the Amherst schools. They are part of a region, and Amherst is 1/4 of the voting block in that region. But I think if you want, you should take a look at what JCPC has been doing with citizen applications. Is it participatory budgeting? No. But in the absence of participatory budgeting program, I think Paul Bockelman actually proposed this, and it's been going on for years, as a way to give citizens the opportunity to make a pitch to the Joint Planning Capital Planning Committee for specific citizen proposals.
Can I, Julian,
Sorry, Andy and then Meg.
Andy and I have our hands up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that this is, my understanding, this is generally capital projects, and I think that one, the cafeteria one, the example you gave was probably not allowed because it would have been an ongoing expense for the.
Well, they didn't have the ability to do that.
Yeah. So
Cafeteria workers.
but I want to make sure that I think our role is to highlight issues that the town council should consider. And so I think it would be perfectly appropriate for us to say, look, you had a commission on this, and we're hearing a lot about it. Julian, we're seeing your screen now, so just so you know.
Get rid of your screen.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to do some math.
But I mean, I think there's going to be a ton of issues, but I think this one, what we've heard is remind the council that this was a proposal, that we had a commission, they need to vote on it. And then if we all agree that that's important, which I think we probably would, then I think that's our role, is to pass it on to the council. And then
right,
we can advocate separately as citizens on what they should do about it. But I'm just worried that if we put too much time into this, we've got a whole lot of other things. So
right,
we're going to have a long list, and we're basically going to have to go down and say, yes, should they look at this or not, and then move on to the next thing. And so
right.
I think there's a way to say this came up, multiple times, whatever. This was raised, we considered it, and we believe there was a commission report, and you should look at it and vote on it.
So
Meg, go ahead, and then I have a comment.
So I agree with what Andy just said totally. I think, lower my hand, that 99% of the people in Amherst don't know about the joint capital budget. And the things that some of these participatory budgeting projects support are so small that they wouldn't register. So I agree with Andy that this was in the charter. There was a committee that was formed to address it, and they need to take a position. The difference between the joint capital budget and this is night and day, because this is a whole participatory budgeting is a whole public campaign that involves the public voting and kids and everybody, you know, people who participate campaigning for the thing they want. It's quite different from the closed process of the joint capital planning process. But I think what Andy
Your mic went out, Meg. We're not hearing you. And
I agree with Andy, we should just remind people that this was in the charter and it hasn't been voted on.
Mhm.
And what makes me wonder when they choose what to vote on and what not to vote on, I hope they're going to vote on whatever we recommend. We want to be sure.
Well, there voting on this isn't an option because the charter requires that the commission, the council act within a certain amount of time from getting the commission's final report. So the commission got a final report on ranked choice voting. I'm not sure what the outcome of that vote was. And like I said, I searched for a copy of a final report on participatory budgeting. And I don't know if there was one that went to council. And I'm not suggesting that the JCPC process is the equivalent of participatory budgeting. And I know of participatory budgeting programs that are far and away less involved than Cambridge. But again, I mean, it's a requirement of the charter that that this committee create a report, present the report to the council, and the council act up or down on it within a certain 90 days of receipt. So it doesn't hurt us to remind the council that there is this requirements in the charter that they need to act on. And so let's go forward with it.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think I did look into the Joint Capital Planning Committee process. I watched all their meetings this year. I feel as though the resident request Joint Capital Planning Committee is a good idea, but it's sort of like a side piece, as in, like, most youth would not know what the Joint Capital Planning Committee process is in the first place, never mind how to submit a resident request. And the process itself as it is feels sort of lame and disengaging, at least this year, was what I noticed watching the meetings. I would almost suggest being a little bit more prescriptive and saying like, we suggest that a participatory budgeting commission use 5% of money allocated to the Joint Capital Planning Committee for the purposes of participatory budgeting, and experiment with or try this model for 2 years or 3 years and see what happens with it, and have them make a report to council that sort of doesn't just have the town council saying yes or no to participatory budgeting, but actually lets us sort of try it and see how it works and get a more direct analysis of it, would be my opinion. Meg, and then Bernie? You're still muted. I'm not sure, you might have a Bluetooth or headphones in. Meg, I can't hear you.
When I take off my earbuds, you hear me?
Yep, that's much better.
Okay, I guess they died. So there's some staffing involved by the town to vet the proposals that are raised to make sure there are no ongoing costs, that they are capital projects, one and done. And so the citizen participation officer that's in the charter was in a large part to provide that staffing for a participatory budgeting process. And it was designed to be between when the budget is approved for the next fiscal year in June until the next, so the process would go on between the end of June when the budget is approved until the budget process begins again in November, and the election is sometime then. So the public citizen participation officer was designed, at least in my opinion, to staff that process of vetting the proposals, making sure they were feasible, that the budgets were accurate, that they were possible, that the various town departments that would be affected were okay with them. So there's a process that was anticipated for the citizen participation officer to make this work. And as we know, that position was originally divided between 3 different people, and now it's just, I don't know where that is, but that's something we might want to circle back to in terms of what the function of the citizen participation officer is. And the thing that a few of us on the Charter Commission were so concerned about was in the change of government from town meeting to the council, that we maintain and build and support meaningful participation. So what's meaningful is a question that we might want to think about at some point. What is meaningful participation as opposed to getting to speak at a meeting and not having your questions answered? Anyway, just a little bit of detail on that community participation officer position.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Meg. Very insightful. Bernie and then Andy.
Well, I don't know if it's insightful, but it's history. Sorry, I'm gonna mute.
What we need to do is not be prescriptive. We need to remind the council that the charter language says shall. That means they have to. Okay, that they shall convene a committee on ranked choice voting. They shall convene a commission on participatory budgeting, and the charter even goes so far as to designate who gets to be on that committee. So the question is, did the council form these committees? Did they act as the charter requires on each committee's proposal? If they haven't done that, then they need to go back and do it and get it right. There's also 3 topics here, which we'll get to in the next section, where the charter says the town council shall study these things. It doesn't say they have to do anything, it just says they have to study them. There's ADA coordinator, permitting non-citizens to vote, and lowering the voting age. So it's not our job to say, council, you should set aside 5% of the capital budget for participatory budgeting. It's our job to say, did you create this commission? Did this commission file its final report? And did you act on that final report in the fashion that the charter requires? If you haven't done that, please go back and do it correctly. So as far as I know, I don't know, and I'll maybe we can ask the town, Athena as the clerk of the council. Was there a vote on ranked choice voting that complied with this section of the charter? And was there a vote on participatory budgeting that complied with this section of the budget, of the charter? And if yes, then it falls to citizens to go back to the council to say, let's take this up again. Were those 3 topics in section 1012 studied? Who studied them and where's the reports? Those are the questions we should be asking, and not going into detail about how many people get to do this or that, or what gets what gets to be taken up in one proposal or another. It's not our job to write the proposals. It's our job to see that the council convened the committee, the commission. The commission made a report, and the council acted appropriately on the report.
Andy, and then Meg, I'm gonna go grab my computer charger.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that the charter does have a number of ways for people to be involved, and that participatory budgeting was an addition to those ways. But in section 8, we have section 8.1 is that residents can call an open meeting and force the council to listen to them. Section 2, free petition allows citizens to make the town council put something on their agenda. Section 8.3 is initiative measures where a group of folks can get something put on the ballot to vote on. Then there's the voter veto, which is citizens to cancel something that the council does. And then we also have numerous town committees that people can work on. So I just wanted to make clear that and then we have representative government where people have representatives that they know who they are and they can petition them as well. So I think that participatory budgeting is a worthy idea, and but it's not the only way that people can be involved. And so I think we want to make sure that we're keeping a sense of proportion about when people are saying there's no way for people to be involved. I think that's an overstatement.
I think Julian had dropped out because maybe his computer died. Meg, I think you were next, though.
Meg, you got to turn your mic on. There you go.
Can't hear you.
Meg,
Sorry.
your things, you got to pull those out, then we can hear you.
All right, so it's interesting when you read I'm just clarifying what the charter says. It says ranked choice voting will have a commission and they'll study it, and there will be a ranked choice voting plan. Participatory budgeting says there'll be a commission, it'll make a recommendation to the council, and they'll decide whether there'll be such a thing or not. I'm just saying they're different the way they're presented.
Mm-hmm.
The difference, one of the things, I don't want to keep going on and on about participatory budgeting, but it's not just somebody going to the Joint Capital Committee and saying, I want a sidewalk. It's organizing people to vote on something you'd like. So there's campaigning, there's, people vote on which things they want. So it's a different level of participation from somebody going to the Joint Capital Committee and saying, I want a sidewalk, or I want a flashlight, a stop sign at my intersection. It engages people in approving what they want to do. Anyway, I know a lot about participatory budgeting, so I'm going to stop talking about it. But in the charter, they're very different. Ranked choice voting is they said there will be a ranked choice voting plan that'll be presented to the legislature, and participatory budgeting will be a commission, and maybe or maybe not it'll happen. They're different. So this is an uphill battle. I'm not gonna, anyway, enough on that. Mute.
Absolutely. Other comments, Marcus?
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say, so I put my hand down.
Okay. Erica, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's, in some ways, it's both are true. The fact that these two items, ranked choice voting and participatory budgeting, were included in the charter specifically, were specifically drawn out. It's different than almost anything else that's in the charter. They were included there as sort of almost like unfinished business of the Charter Commission that needed more study or needed more action or needed more organizing or needed more voting or whatever. So that's true. They're singled out, and they merit a response from a charter review. However, it seems like also the bigger issue is something about a comment or a response on the lack of response. In other words, the issue doesn't feel resolved. Like there's lots of sections in this Article 10 that we feel comfortable, probably we're going to excise them or remove them completely because they're finished business of the transition from one form of government to another. And then there's these pieces of unfinished business that never, to whatever, however you write the narrative, like they never got a full and complete answer from the town government. And that is a place for us to make a comment or a recommendation or a change to in the realm of like responsiveness or action on the part of the elected town government. It's not necessarily like we're going to make a recommendation about what we think is the best thing to do about participatory budgeting. We can do that, but ultimately it's a more of a higher level issue. Like we're responding to the fact that there are certain things the town council has not responded to that they were in some way mandated to respond to. Does that make sense? Like it's not about necessarily what we think ranked choice voting plus up, down, it doesn't matter. It's sort of like it was put in the charter, it didn't get responded to. Why is that? How do we fix that?
Yeah, precisely.
Raphael? You're muted.
I would say, Erica, that window of let's invite town council in to hear more is whatever format that's in, it's an opportunity to ask those questions and find out more.
Excellent. Other comments, questions on this topic? I think it's very important for us to consider, and we may need to do a little forcing the hand of town council. Okay. Topics for study. Disability Act coordinator, non-citizens. Any comments on that? Questions on that? No?
No.
Okay. Both are pending. And then adoption of measures to assist in transition. Any other comments on section 10 on the whole? A lot of it can be sort of X'd out, I think, with exception of that important stuff at the end that we talked about. Andy?
Yeah, I think I would just say that the meat of it for us is sections 10:10 through 10:13.
Yep.
Or actually 10:12. 10:13. Not really. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Other questions, comments about this? If not,
I just have one quick one. I think when we were talking about ranked choice voting, it was one of the things that all 9 of the commission members felt was a positive force in elections generally. I think the challenge in Amherst that I wonder about is with multiple people running for, you know, if you have 2 councilors from each district and 3 at-large people that you're voting for, I think the complexity is higher than if you're using ranked choice voting for a mayor or a senator or something like that. So that may be a contributing factor to why it hasn't happened, because the math gets difficult with the multiplicity of offices, with multiple candidates for multiple offices. But that's just sort of an aside, I guess.
yeah. Other comments, questions, items for future agenda planning, or topics that were not anticipated? No? Okay. I move we adjourn then.
Second.
Excellent. Motion made, Marcus seconds. Andy?
Yes.
Myself, I'm an I. Meg? Erica?
Yes.
Raphael?
Yes.
Bernie?
Yes.
Marcus?
Hopefully a yes.
Awesome. All right. I will see you all in 2 weeks. Thanks so much.
See you guys. Bye.